The man who shot a pregnant mother to death has officially been sentenced to prison. Wait till you hear the reason why he murdered this woman and her unborn child in cold blood. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. A judge in Jackson County, Missouri, has just sentenced 35-year-old Emmett Williams to 40 years in prison. Why? Because he pled guilty to murder and armed criminal action counts for shooting a pregnant mother of two, Shayla Curts, killing her and her unborn baby. How did this happen? We go back to the night of December 6, 2022. And that is when Kansas City police officers responded to a reported shooting, and they find Shayla dead on the couch in the home, gunshot wound to the head. And get this, there were witnesses who were at that residence. They placed Williams at the scene. And not only that, but police find a 9mm Luger shell casing on the floor of the living room right by the couch where Shayla was killed. Now, according to a probable cause statement in the case, a witness told police that Williams had come to this residence to hang out upstairs in his bedroom, and that witness, another witness, and Shayla, they were also in that bedroom with Williams. That witness told police that Shayla went downstairs to the living room, and approximately 5 minutes later, Williams told him that he was leaving. Then, about 1 minute later, the witness reportedly told investigators he heard a gunshot, comes downstairs, and sees the victim deceased, his front door standing open. So the witness reportedly looks outside and, quote, saw somebody running northbound. This is according to the complaint. And here's where it just takes a whole other chilling turn. This witness stated that there was never an altercation between Shayla and Williams that night, nothing that would have precipitated this. And it makes it seem like this really came out of nowhere. Now, the other witness, as I mentioned, heard that gunshot too. So now you have two witnesses. Now, how did they find Williams? How did police find Williams? Why did he do this? Well, according to the probable cause statement, at 4:15 the next morning, Williams calls 911 and says he shot someone and wants to turn himself in. So about 15 minutes later, he's arrested. He's taken into custody. And you want to know why he shot Shayla? Of all reasons, who he said, by the way, he'd only known for a few years, he'd seen occasionally. He tells police that Shayla would antagonize him, that she would call him names. And while normally he would ignore her, that day he pulls out a 9mm handgun and shoots her in the head. Now, he claimed that he had lost several family members and was processing emotions not the right way. He said his mental health issues, his drug use caused him to snap. That's a word that he used. Now, one other way to corroborate this story, that he's telling the truth, was that he apparently tells police that after he shoots Shayla, he runs away but falls down a ravine, losing his gun, the 9mm Jimenez that he used in the shooting, his phone, and his backpack. He ends up taking law enforcement to that location, and guess what? They find the gun. So now his story is corroborated. So with all that in mind, I want to bring on right now Police Sergeant Kyle Shoberg, co-instructor of the Patrol Survival Tactics Seminar, host of the Shots Fired podcast. Kyle, great to see you. Thanks for coming on. I mean, essentially, we're talking about a guy who took out a gun, shot this woman in the head while he was just walking by her, a cold-blooded killing. In your experience, these kinds of cases, does something just like happen like that out of nowhere?
Yeah, I mean, this is a tragic story, and it would lead me to believe that when he left that residence, he already had that built up in his mind that that was probably something that he was going to do. No, these don't happen all the time, but you do have his story of, he's obviously on drugs by his own admission. He's got mental health problems. All of that combined, I mean, that's a recipe for disaster.
Even if he didn't premeditate it, because I think he ultimately pled guilty to second-degree murder. The idea here, if he just snapped, he just, one day took out a gun. Have you seen cases like that? I mean, if you take the witnesses where they say there was no fight, there was no altercation, I don't know how well he knows Shayla, but just to do that, kill her unborn child?
Unfortunately, I have seen cases like that where everything seems to be fine, nothing's going on, there's no argument, and then people do snap for whatever reasons and kill people. And so, although this isn't something that happens all the time, I mean, stuff like this does occur, and it is tragic, the fact that he kills this innocent lady and that she was pregnant with her unborn child. It's a horrible story.
Can you tell us more about this weapon? It's reportedly a 9mm Jimenez. It's a Luger style weapon, I guess. I mean, do you know, what can you tell us about the capacity of this weapon? Is it readily available? What can you tell us about it?
Well, I'm going to admit I'm not a huge gun guy, even though I've been in law enforcement for 19 years, but it is a handgun, and it says that he had pulled it out of a holster in his waistband. So that it obviously was easily concealable to him. I would venture to guess he's probably not even supposed to own a firearm. But yeah, I mean, it's a handgun. He had it in his waistband. It sounds like as he was walking by her, he easily pulls it out and shoots her in the head with it.
Hey, by the way, I want to say really quickly, thank you for coming to us here on Sidebar for this story. I know it's not an easy one to hear. It's a distressing one to hear, but we really appreciate it. And also, I have to thank our partner, Morgan & Morgan, for sponsoring this episode. It helps us make these shows possible. And here is the thing. If you should get injured, America's largest injury law firm, Morgan & Morgan, may be who you want in your corner. Aside from the fact that there's no upfront fee, aside from the fact that the whole process from beginning to end can be done right from your smartphone, Morgan & Morgan has an incredible track record, like recent verdicts of $12 million in Florida and $26 million in Philadelphia, and these are higher than the highest insurance offers in these cases. And look, even if your case isn't worth millions of dollars, Morgan & Morgan will fight for what you deserve. So if you're injured, you can easily start a claim at forthepeople.com/LC Sidebar. Can you tell us what it's like for police to respond to a homicide like this? And not even just a homicide. You're talking about a young mother, a pregnant mother. How difficult is it for officers to respond to a scene like this? And also, what do they do once they're there? How do they case the scene?
So I have responded to a double homicide, a gang shooting where a male and female were both shot and killed in a drive-by shooting, and the female was actually 8 or 9 months pregnant as well. And I can tell you, knowing that an innocent person is pregnant with this innocent child who ultimately ends up losing his life as well, it's sad. And I mean, you got to treat these scenes just like any other scene, and you want to preserve as much evidence as you possibly can. So for the officers that are responding, you're just going to freeze the scene. You're going to collect the statements from the witnesses that were there, which was done, and you're not going to allow anybody to come or go from that crime scene until detectives get there, crime scene investigators get there, take photographs, and everything is going to be combed through, collected, and those take a while to make sure that those scenes are fully investigated before turning anything over.
Do you take anything from the fact that this was one gunshot, one shot right in her head? It wasn't like he just unloaded the gun. Does that tell you anything about this?
Yeah, it's definitely strange. It just tells me that this was just an act that just suddenly spurred on him, where it was like he's walking outside, sees her, she's vulnerable, pulls out the gun, shoots her, and just based on the witness account, takes off running outside the house and goes running down the street. Um, Other than that, I mean, who knows what's going through his head at that time?
Let me talk to you about this. So apparently police interview him. He doesn't seem to put up much resistance and admits it. I thought that was interesting that he calls and admits what he did. Why do you think somebody like that would do that? And let me ask you this part. If you're going in to interview somebody who is admitting to a crime, you're not even necessarily trying to say, hey, we have evidence against you. We're trying to get a confession. You have somebody who's already admitting it. How do you approach that kind of interview? And why do you think he did this?
Well, so the question why is that's on him, right? He's going to have to explain that. I mean, the investigators can only guess why this would have happened, but
Or
they're
why
going to
he
go in there.
confessed. Yeah.
Or yeah, I mean, and that happens. That is also not uncommon for people to confess to these types of crimes. You know, it weighs on them, and in this case, he wasn't going to get away. The investigators were going to link everything together, and he probably would have been caught regardless. But they're going to go in there, read him his rights. He's either going to invoke them, or he's going to be willing to offer his statement, which is what he did. So in that case, you're just going to let him tell his story, and based on his story, he's going to also have to, or the detectives are going to have to corroborate, like you said earlier, with the evidence that the story he's telling is actually true. So just merely somebody saying, I killed this person, that actually isn't going to be good enough to get a conviction for any type of homicide. So the fact that he took them to the ravine where he says he dropped his backpack, his cell phone, the gun, they recovered all of that. They're going to take the bullet, they're going to fire that firearm that they located, and they're going to do a comparison. that's going to show that the bullet that was fired in the homicide was is from the same gun that was located that he claims he dumped in the ravine. So all of those things are going to have to be done to get that conviction. They're also more than likely going to take his cell phone, take his data, and go back and do a cell phone data dump and figure out where his phone was pinging off what towers at the time of the homicide and place him there at the scene during the homicide. So those are all steps that still have to be taken even after his confession. So the work isn't done just after leaving that room, him saying, "Hey, I killed her. Here's where I left the evidence." There's still a lot of work to be done to actually get a conviction.
Yeah, and think about this, you have the physical evidence that corroborates his story, his confession, witnesses who were there. There was only one way this could ultimately end for him. And you have to think about the human element. So Shayla is survived by two daughters. Her unborn child, she had named Soleil. And her obituary reads, "She lit up every room she walked into with her charismatic free spirit and electric personality. She had a comical and lively sense of humor, making fun in any situation. She made her friends and family laugh every day. She was giving, loving, and she cared for everyone she met. She would often help people she didn't even know. Shayla will be missed tremendously by all who knew and loved her. Her friends and family will keep her memory alive through all the beautiful memories she left behind." And we're also going to put up this GoFundMe link that was set up by Shayla's family to raise money for her mother, who at the time of the GoFundMe, when it was set up, was planning to take care of Shayla's children. And our thoughts and prayers go out to the family. Really, really difficult case. Kyle Shoberg, thank you so much for coming on. Great seeing you.
Yeah, hey, thank you, Jesse. Again, this is it's a sad story.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. Speak to you next time.